Welcome back for another deep dive. We're really getting into it today, exploring the intriguing world of ant communication.
Fascinating stuff.
Our listeners have been really curious about how these tiny creatures manage such complex tasks. So today we're focusing on how ants use pheromones, those chemical messengers, to essentially shout, "Dinner time, everyone."
It's like a secret language, but instead of words, they use scents. And what's fascinating is every new discovery in this field has ripple effects. It doesn't just change how we understand insects, but communication as a whole.
Totally. And we've got a paper hot off the press from 2023 that's got the scientific community buzzing a real head-scratcher, you could say.
Oh, I've heard of this one. Let me guess. A single pheromone model accounts for empirical patterns of ant colony foraging previously modeled using two pheromones.
You got it. Catchy title, eh? Published in Cognitive Systems Research, this paper, the brainchild of Eric Saund and Daniel R. Friedman, really shakes things up in the world of ant communication.
They weren't afraid to challenge the status quo.
Not at all. These researchers zoomed in on a specific type of ant, Pheidole megacephala. Ever heard of them?
Rings a bell.
They're better known as the big-headed ant. Their name's quite fitting, actually, when you see them.
All about the head size with those ants. But their foraging, that's what's really got the science world talking right now.
Right. And for a long time, everyone thought ants used two distinct pheromones to guide their food hunts.
Two, like a 1-2 punch for finding a snack. Makes sense, right? Use different signals for different purposes.
Yeah. It's like their version of Find My Friends, but for snacks. One signal to say, "Hey, anyone around looking for food?" And another to announce, "Food's over here. Come and get it."
So like a breadcrumb trail versus a siren song for hungry ants.
Exactly. The first type, the exploration pheromone, acts like a long-lasting trail marker, like a breadcrumb trail. It lets other ants know, "Hey, I checked this area, nothing much here."
Marking their territory in a way. Leaving a message for their future selves. Efficient little guys, aren't they?
And then there's the second type, the foraging pheromone. That's the siren song you mentioned. Powerful but fades quickly. Basically a big neon sign flashing, "Dinner's served."
Okay, now I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. But how do you even go about testing this two-pheromone theory? Do you eavesdrop on their little ant conversations?
Well, not exactly eavesdropping. Imagine a miniature ant highway, right? But it splits, forming a Y shape.
Okay.
That's our Y maze. Scientists, they put different combinations of pheromones on each branch of the Y and then sit back and watch. Which path do the ants prefer? It's like a choose-your-own-adventure, but for ants.
Clever, a deceptively simple tool, the Y-maze, but the data it provides, pure gold.
And in this case, the results. They kind of threw a wrench in the whole two-pheromone idea.
Yeah.
The ants were behaving exactly as the scientists expected.
Oh, that's where things get really interesting. What did Saund and Friedman make of this? Did they have an alternative explanation up their sleeves?
They did, and it was a bold one. They proposed that maybe, just maybe, ants are using a single pheromone after all, but with a twist. So instead of two separate signals, they're saying one pheromone, but with different, it's like levels of intensity.
Think of it like this. Instead of having different words for whisper and shout, the ants just adjust the volume of their one pheromone word.
Ah, I see.
More pheromone equals stronger signal. Maybe it just means, hey, I found a huge pile of food over here, come quick. Less pheromone, a weaker signal. Maybe it's just checking this area out. Might be something good here.
Okay, makes sense. But how would the ants even tell the difference between, a little bit of pheromone and a lot? These are tiny amounts we're talking about.
Good question, right. Well, this is where it gets even more interesting. See, these researchers, they think ants might have this super-powered sensory system that can actually amplify even the faintest little sniff of pheromone.
Seriously?
Imagine, if you can, having a sense of smell so sensitive you could detect like one single drop of perfume, but in a whole football stadium.
Wow, that's incredible.
Right. So even a tiny little trace of pheromone, the ants wouldn't miss it. They'd pick it up loud and clear.
It's like turning up the volume on a faint radio signal. Suddenly you can hear it perfectly.
Exactly. So with this ability to amplify even these super weak signals, the ants could detect even the smallest changes in pheromone concentration.
And that's how they figure out where the best food sources are. It's like a GPS system hardwired into their little ant brains.
Exactly. But how do you even begin to test this whole single pheromone idea? You can't exactly ask the ants what they're thinking.
Right, like, "Hey, Mr. Ant, what's the pheromone situation today?"
Right. So this is where things get really high-tech. The researchers, they built a computer model, a really, really complex model.
So they basically created a virtual ant colony inside a computer.
Yeah, you could say that. They created this model with all the key elements of their theory. The single pheromone, the varying concentrations, that signal amplification we talked about, and even the actual ant behavior they observed.
So they could test out their hypothesis in all kinds of different scenarios, but all inside the computer.
Exactly. They're basically running simulations. It's like a digital ant farm. And here's the really cool part. When they ran their model using the single pheromone theory, it actually predicted the real-life Y maze results they observed.
Are you kidding me? So this new model, even though it's simpler, it actually explains the ant's behavior better.
It certainly seems that way. Challenges a lot of the traditional thinking around ant communication. But of course, like with any new scientific discovery, more research is needed.
Of course.
Mm.
So what's the next step? How do we know for sure if the single pheromone idea holds up?
Well, the chemical makeup of these pheromones, that's what we need to look at next.
So we need to crack the code, figure out what these pheromones are actually made of.
Yeah, it's like we've been listening to these ant conversations for years, but maybe we got the grammar all wrong.
The words themselves are simpler than we thought.
Exactly. Maybe it's not about having a whole dictionary of pheromones. It's how you use them that matters. Like the intensity, the context, all that. It really makes you realize how much we still don't know about the natural world.
It's humbling, for sure. To think even something like ant communication, which seemed pretty straightforward, could be so much more complex.
And that's what's so exciting about this research. Makes you question everything. If ants can do so much with just one pheromone, what other simple solutions are we missing out there? In nature, in technology, everywhere.
It's a whole new way of looking at things. So what's the next big question for these ant experts? What mysteries are they tackling now?
Well, for starters, does this single pheromone idea, does it hold up with other types of ants? Or is it just this one species? Do they all speak the same chemical language? Or are there different dialects out there?
It's like we're just starting to decode the ant language. Who knows how many languages there are left to discover?
Right. And the applications, they go way beyond ants, too. This research could change how we deal with pests, for example.
Make our ant traps even better.
Exactly. Or it could help us design smarter robots that work together like a colony.
Like those little robot vacuums, but way more coordinated.
Precisely. The possibilities are, well, they're endless. So next time you see a trail of ants marching across your kitchen counter, take a second and think about it.
All that complex communication going on right under our noses.
A whole world of chemical signals. And they've been using this system for millions of years. It just goes to show the smallest creatures can have the biggest surprises in store for us.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the amazing world of ant communication. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired to learn more.
Me too. It's a good reminder that we can find incredible discoveries anywhere if we just keep our minds open.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's all the time we have for today, but thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring and never stop asking questions.